Welcome back, guys. Rodrigo here with another episode for Asheville Real Estate News. Today, as I mentioned starting this episode, I think we're get the opportunity to talk to like the Napoleon Hill of real estate for Asheville. It's conversation today is with Charles Boyett of Asheville Real Estate Producers. If you're not familiar, this is the production that highlights the top 300 agents here in the Asheville area. And so we get to talk about what makes a top agent. What is a real producer? Sort of his story on how he came back to Asheville, things that he's learned, and if you are an agent, things to focus on to really up your game. So hope you really enjoy this episode. Share with all the agents that you know, and see you guys on the next one. Take care. Well, Charles, welcome to the show. Can I still say welcome to Asheville, or I guess that welcome's worn out a little bit now?
No, man. I'm trying so hard to regain my local status, but I think welcome is still appropriate. I'm still getting my feet grounded.
Well, I guess that is a really good place to start as far as trying to get your local status back. I know Asheville has so many stories on how people show up here, and well, what's yours? Or welcome back.
Yeah, well, thank you. So my story is probably I thought maybe unique, but the more people I've met around here, not unique at all. So I'm originally from here. I grew up in, well, it's hard to say grew up. I left here when I was 10 years old. Lived out in Leicester, off Alexander. And always told myself when I was 18 I was going to come back home. And if the camera picks up some of the grays, it'll tell you I missed that by a few years. So come back home. It's been something I've wanted to do for a long time. And as we were kind of chatting off air, it was just always trying to find the right way to do it and the right way to make it seamless and keep the needle moving forward. But I landed back here in November. Just ultimately closed on a new home in June, and so working on my local status once again.
What why did you know right off the bat when you left that you wanted to come back? Like, do you remember?
Yeah, I honestly I do. It's this place was amazing growing up. I mean, again, I left when I was 10, but I had great childhood. I had great friends here. One friend in particular is literally my lone connection to the area. A gentleman named Brad Edwards here in town. We just stayed connected through the years, and I think from age 10 to age 40, I think we saw each other like maybe 5 times, but we just always had this connection, and so the connection was never lost with Asheville. Right. We just stayed in touch, and I always knew this was a place I wanted to bring my boy back up to, and so it was just a matter of when. It was never a matter of if I was coming home. It was just when were we going to do it. Yeah,
and so it's been a little while, and I know I want to get into what happened between 18 and 40 a little bit, but what happened for this to be the moment for you to come back? I know we were talking a little bit about it off camera, but
something real simple.
Yeah.
I left when I was 10. My son is 10. It is literally
full circle.
I have been saying for years, like literally long before I had a son, when I turned 18, I was coming home, and then we got deep into the real estate game, and there was just never the right time. And as we were chatting about, well, we just figured there was never going to be a right time. And so the catalyst that really said now's the time was realizing that my son was now the same age that I moved away from. And so in some corny way, I wanted him to be able to pick up on the lifestyle and the childhood that I left behind.
Yeah.
Nothing bad about Jacksonville. It was a great place to grow up, but there's just something about the mountains and being back home that's just incredible.
Yeah, so I moved here from Canada, and one of the reasons I moved here, I was like, how far south can I go that is in the mountains and doesn't have snow is kind of like the criteria I was looking for. But then even when I moved here, I was like, it's going to be a year, and then I'm going to Colorado, because I was like, these mountains aren't big enough. And that was almost 10 years ago for me. It's just like it's sticky here.
Right.
The mountains will never go away, hopefully, and which is a great thing about Asheville. So, well, let's talk a little bit about the real estate. I was excited to connect with you. For August, we're going to have a little bit of a theme talking about like agents and like why people decide to be real estate agents and what makes a good agent. And I thought it'd be great to start with you. It's almost like in my mind, you could almost call you like the Napoleon Hill for little old Asheville for real estate agents, right? Because you get to just talk to people about what makes them tick and what makes them good and everything like that. I was like, this would be such a good way to kind of set the tone. But why real estate? I mean, you can start anywhere you want to as far as why you're involved with real estate now.
Sure. So we'll kind of go 10,000 foot overview.
Yeah.
Real estate for me started at 18. Right when I was supposed to be moving back home, I got introduced to the real estate world by my mother. My mother's a realtor. My father's in commercial real estate. Real estate runs through my veins, man. It's just, it's what I grew up around.
Yeah.
In 18, I got into actually the lending side of things, and I did a little of the mortgage finance. And when all my friends were still partying and running the streets and all that stuff, which is fun, I still like to do that. I started instantly focusing on my career, and I knew that I needed some. I'm not college educated. I've got some college, but I didn't graduate. So I knew that if I was going to make something of myself, I needed to get started. And I saw my mother be successful. I saw my father be successful, and by no means did I benefit directly from their businesses, but I got to see how things were done.
Yeah.
And I like probably a lot of your audience. Once that real estate bug bites you. It bites
doesn't
hard.
let go, yeah.
It bites hard. And so the career kind of evolved through the years. I did mortgage finance, obviously did sales, had an opportunity to grow as an executive position with one of the big national brands, and coaching and leadership. And ultimately, while I've had kind of an eclectic career covering all the phases of real estate, the piece that really ultimately led me to what I'm doing now is when I boiled all my favorite parts down about real estate, it didn't come down to the transaction, it didn't come down to the paycheck, it came down to the people and the relationships that you could create within this industry. And so I started hyper-focusing on why those relationships were so important, and that's ultimately what led me down this path with Asheville Real Producers, is that I kind of operate under a very fundamental belief that relationships are literally everything in this business. Everything. The transaction's great. The clients are we have to have them. But the reality is if you focus on the relationships and building long-standing and meaningful relationships, the transactions seem to always follow.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme in my life, and most people that I talk to have been doing this, and been in real estate in any way, shape, or form. That always comes back to that. It's like, you make one really good contact, it opens a door. You walk through that, you make 3 new contacts. It just kind of creates a really good ripple effect.
Sure, it does.
But I was looking up and kind of trying to get a little bit of background on you. I read somewhere that you were involved in the fitness industry as well, and I was curious if you could speak a little bit about that and if you felt that there was any crossover from what you learned there on how it applies to real estate.
So that is a long answer, but I'll see if I can give you a glossy version.
Yeah.
So fitness is still a passion in my life. Not to the level that it once was, but look, real estate, everything that I've ever done can all boil back down to real estate. So real estate obviously gave me certain resources to be able to launch other businesses. And when I first got into the fitness industry, it was really, I was at the gym all day long. I was training, well, not all day long, I had clients, but I was training whenever I could. And the gym I was going to, the guy came to me one day and said, "Hey man, I'm gonna turn your membership off." I'm like, "Why? I'm paying my bill." And he said, "No, we're closing, and I just don't want your membership to get caught up in that never-ending loop where you're getting charged for." So I was like, all right, he's trying to do me a solid. So I went home that night and I thought about it, and I went back the next day and I said, "Before you cut me off, I need to talk with the owner." And I'd been talking a big game that I wanted to own a gym for years. And so I see this opportunity in front of me. And so the first area that real estate kind of crossed over here is this gym was a freaking mess. It was a mess. The books were horrendous. The contracts were jacked. Everything was. So I knew enough about lease contracts. I knew enough about just contract law in general that it really helped me navigate. I had no representation. I went in there and just negotiated this whole thing by myself. And the guy started off with it was like a $1.2 million price tag, and we got him down to the low price if I just assumed his negative debts. And
that is awesome.
It
what
worked
a story!
Out great.
Yeah.
It worked out great. His debts were immense,
but still,
but it wasn't 1.2.
But it's the delta, right? It's like
exactly.
That's the difference. Yeah.
So and the beautiful part about that is all the debt remained in his name.
Wow. Great.
So it felt very similar to maybe a real estate deal or two we have structured in the past. So it got in the fitness game. That was great. It was a passion project for me. It was never anything I saw myself retiring as. But the reason I wanted the gyms was it was a way for me to, I wanted to have an asset that could do good for people. And if it just, all it ever did was break even, I would be happy with it if I had an opportunity to impact people's lives. And that was really the bulk of it. Yes, I wanted to train. Yes, I wanted to work out. But at the end of the day, what I wanted to do was give people a place where they could improve upon themselves.
Right. That I think stories like that are always exciting because it's always like reminds me of like just the power of asking, right? Like you can't get something unless you ask for it. And I know for me, like negotiating, I always am surprised. And I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I'm gonna even ask this. So would you consider? And yeah, actually I would. It's like, oh my goodness. All right, let's do this thing. Yeah. So well, let's bring it back to real estate then specifically. Why Asheville Real Producers, and how did that come to fruition? Did you have any experience in the, I don't know, is this like production industry? I guess I don't even know what it would call.
Yeah, so at its core, I do not own the Real Producers brand.
Right.
I own the franchise, Asheville Real Producers, and the Real Producers brand is all over the country. Any major metro you can imagine we're in. We started off with one location in 2014, and I think we just crossed the 145 metros.
Wow.
And obviously Asheville was one of the newest slated markets to open up. So what got me, I was introduced to this in Jacksonville, down there as a sales professional. I had the opportunity to participate in the Jacksonville Real Producers platform. And I saw I didn't really know that I was looking at it as an opportunity because I didn't know it was an opportunity. As I shared with you earlier, I thought the lady that owned the franchise down there just kind of worked for Real Producers. I didn't know what she did.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I was looking for a way to relocate back to Asheville that I really started exploring this as an option, had a conversation, and they said, oh, wow, we're opening up that as the market that we're selling a franchise in. I'm like, wait a minute. I could own my own business. I don't have to work for you. And so that conversation started in July of 2019.
That was quick.
In October of 2019, I'm in Chicago signing franchise documents. November 1st, I land in Nashville. So it was a very whirlwind situation.
Yeah, I was gonna say the dominoes fell quick there, huh?
They did, but I think when they fell quick, but I don't think they fell reckless, right? It was something that I knew I wanted. I saw how this could be beneficial, and I saw that the core values of the RP brand aligned with, like we were speaking of earlier, is that I truly feel relationships are everything, and I found this platform that focused on the relationships within the industry. So while they fell fast, they fell tight. They fell together, like everything fit very, very well.
How much work did you do ahead of time just figuring out what you wanted to do when you got in Asheville to know that they fell tight, if that makes sense?
No, it did. So when I got the franchise, literally I get a logo, a masthead, and a printing facility.
And a thumbs up. Good luck.
Pat on the back, congratulations, go get them, Tiger. So everything is for Asheville Real Producers is 100% grassroots, all organic growth. And I leverage some of the tools we all leverage. Right. Instagram. Right. My go-to piece after I left signing the franchise documents, I literally had to take. I was like, all right, well, great. Now I'm going to focus on these agents. All right, I don't know any of the agents in town. None of them know me. How do I find them? Instagram. So I start searching hashtags, Asheville Real Estate, Real Estate Professional. Found 828's great. Yeah. And then I found another great organization here that does a really awesome party. I stumbled upon the Asheville Top 100 tag. Right, so that's something that a lot of people participate in. A great accolade people to have, and so I found that hashtag and searched it, and it unfolded the list of people I needed to talk to.
Yeah, your marching orders at that point, basically.
My marching
right?
orders, and so then I just picked up the phone and do what we do in real estate. We smile and dial. And I started calling, and the first 20 conversations were all, no, thank you, I don't want to buy your leads. I'm like, no, I'm not selling anything, I promise. But it literally was taken to a tool that we all have access to and leveraging it to get in front of as many people as possible.
When you were thinking of moving here, did you have any thought about like just getting your license and then going the traditional route, or were you intentionally trying to find something a little different? Because I know you've been in real estate a while, and we've talked now for a little while, but you haven't talked too much about being an agent in and of itself. And I know you mentioned that you are all like about creating impact and relationships. So was that something you considered, or were you always looking at a way to be like involved in real estate but not direct like consumer to?
That's a great question. So in regards to the transition back home, I knew I wanted to come home before I knew I was going to buy this franchise.
Right.
And so, of course, I mean, real estate's it's what's provided every opportunity I've ever had in life. And so it's always on the back burner. I still have my active license in Florida set in referral status. And but when the plans to relocate initially bubbled up inside of me, that was the go-to plan. I guess I'll just come up here and get my license and start over again. And it was at that time that this opportunity, actually at a Real Producers event in Jacksonville, I sat and talked with the franchise owner, and she shared the opportunity with me. It blew my mind. And I said, that's it. That's what I want to do, because still, even in real estate sales, my beliefs of impacting people and lives and helping others with their business, that's still what I like about the sales side of it. So it was definitely something that wasn't the initial plan. Real estate sales was going to be the go-to, but I'm very pleased with the direction this is all taken. Yeah.
What do you now that you've been, so that was October, we're in July now, 9 months, give or take. What has been the biggest thing that's been your takeaway that you've been like, man, this really validated the decision?
The first issue hitting was pretty serious. When I first got here, my first day on the ground, I think it was actually November 1st, and I was up here with a concept, an idea, and hopefully a whole lot of smiles. I mean, I was just talking to anybody that would talk to me, and I knew I believed in the idea, and I knew the concept was right. I'd seen it successful in other markets, but it was unknown. And so probably the biggest like sigh of relief, the monkey off my back, was when the April issue dropped with Marie Reed on the cover, and that was an amazing feeling, and at the same time the most bittersweet thing I've ever encountered in my life, because think about what's happening. I was going to ask April you about 1st. That next. Yep. Oh my gosh. So it's like everything's going, we're cranking, we're running, we're literally, we broke franchise records for how fast we launched. I mean, things are running as great as they could. First issue drops, literally the next week, offices close. Everybody, all the issues get sent directly to the agent's office that they could no longer access. and so it made me scramble and reevaluate a couple things, but that was the biggest like sigh of relief and also gut punch at the same time.
Wow, it's a lot of emotions to go through.
It really was.
What was the takeaway from that? I mean, I think a lot of people with COVID had to really look at how nimble their businesses were, and could you pivot? Did you have that contingency plans, or how did that go for you?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a contingency plan. I went all in, and but what that scenario, and really it's still unfolding. I mean, that feels like ages ago, but it's still just a few months back. You said people had to be nimble, and that was very important to me. While I didn't have a contingency plan because I had planned on phase one working, we had to reevaluate. We had to restructure. We were going to be a completely print platform, and I evolved immediately and put together a digital program, whereas the publication goes directly to the top 300 agents in the Asheville market. My digital platform and the app that I have, which is available on our Instagram page, is available to everybody and their mama. Like literally, I put no restrictions on it because I want people to be able to download it, share it, show their love to their friends and family. And so that was a big piece, going from a exclusively print to pivoting and being a print and digital in less than 30 days was a move that I had to make.
Quick, yeah.
I want people to have these magazines and be able to read it, but if they can't access them in their offices or they don't want to go to the office for whatever reason, I didn't want that to be a reason we can't still play together.
Yeah. So top 300. So is that there's 300 that get circulated essentially? I mean, I'm sure you get some more for vendors and things like that, but that's the
That is the direct
cutoff?
Yeah, so the top 300, and I've got some consideration over the next year or so. I may evolve that to a top 500, just because this is a pretty potent market, and the numbers of total agents kind of, for instance, I'll give you an example. In Jacksonville, it's a 500 market, but there's 10,000 agents, right? So we want the 300 here in town are responsible for 70% of every dollar that is produced. So the 300 represents 6% of the total, or 6.5% of the total registered agents in this area. I look at Buncombe, Madison, Haywood, Henderson. I look at the Asheville area. And so those 300 represent 6% of the total agent count, but make up just that 70% of the total volume. We always hear the 80-20 rule, but it's more extreme than that. Yeah. So we goes to them directly. Like I said, the digital component is open to everybody. Of course, my vendors and brokers and VIX. So I mean, altogether, I think I put about 400 pieces of print out on the streets every month. We'll see how that evolves over the years, but the top 300 for now.
And what is it just MLS data that you're using to make that cutoff, or what is the criteria?
So the criteria, there's a million ways to create top lists.
Right.
And I wanted to go with the most authentic version, which is strictly production dollars. I don't look at units, because I saw one person in town that had $15 million in production, and they had 2 transactions. Okay. You can't shortchange this person's 15 mil.
Yeah.
That cash hit the bank account.
Yeah.
Some people thought, well, maybe they shouldn't qualify because they only did 2 units. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, because they put themselves in a certain circle. They had to work to that point.
Yeah.
So they just have a different business model.
Right.
So I think the production tells the story. And so really what I did, everything I'm working off right now is year over year. So it's all 2019 numbers. Once we roll over to this year and we get out of 2020.
That happens.
Right, exactly. We'll start looking at 2020 numbers for our 21 distribution.
Very cool. How has that been? How has those conversations been? Have you had people try to pitch themselves into the top 300, or have you reached out to somebody who's been like, "Hey, you're top 300"? They're like, "Hey, I don't want the spotlight." Like, what's that?
Both. I've had both.
Yeah.
I've had people. One of my favorite things. Our tagline is connecting, elevating, and inspiring. Right. So just because you're not a top 300 doesn't mean you're not going to be next year. I had a conversation with an agent, Stacy Kilmchuk from Christie's yesterday, and she had her numbers, which whatever they were the previous year. I know what they were, but not going to put it out there. She has basically quadrupled her income. Not only is she going to be in the top 300 next year, she's going to be deep in the top 300.
Right.
So just because they're not necessarily on the list doesn't mean that we're not talking to them. So I've had people want to know how they get in.
Yeah.
It's production. Right. I've had people that said they didn't want to participate because I think that comes from a place of me still being relatively new in the area. And I think there's still some agents that think right around the corner, I'm going to hit them with a sell.
Yeah, right? They don't trust what they're seeing.
Exactly. And I get it. I mean, because I've been licensed for altogether 20 years, been in the game for 22 years. Yeah. I get it. Every call an agent gets is usually somebody trying to sell them a lead or some type of marketing ploy. So I understand it. And so I am empathetic to where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And so the best thing I always do is like, look, if you look at our Instagram page, anybody on there, and there's quite the collection of agents starting to show up on there, they will all vouch that not a penny.
There's no sales
There
pitch
is
here.
no sale. It's literally, I just want to show love to people.
Have you found that there's any, like if you had to drill it down to like one characteristic that these top 300 that you're seeing is put them in that position? I mean, is that a question you could answer, or do we need to expand that for more than one?
So there's a laundry list of answers to that, but there is what's interesting and really kind of validates what we're doing here is if you talk to any of them, and I have now had a conversation face-to-face with at least 150, 160 of the top 300 agents since I've been here in town. And they all focus on the client relationship. They all genuinely want to do what's best for the customer. They focus on really diving into their spheres. However they work their sphere may be a million different ways, but it seems that the number one characteristic is they all focus on the relationship over the transaction. A transaction will not lead to a great relationship, but a great relationship can lead to multiple transactions.
Yeah.
So those that are firing on all cylinders are doing all they can to make sure that once they have a client, even through the transaction and after, that client experience does not end when the deed is recorded. It continues. So that's the number one character trait, I would say, is that they all focus on the relationship. But then the other piece, we have all agents. They may not hit on all of them, but they've got to have certain sales skills. You can't just be a genuinely good person and you can do okay, but you'll never reach the heights unless you invest in your craft and your education and your skill set, whether it be your interpersonal skills, right? Your persuasion skills. Your negotiation skills, presentation skills are huge in this business. So there's certain sales skills that is always going to have to be accompanying the fact that you focus on relationships. Yeah. One will not get the job done. One will get you marginal results. A combination of the two will get you sky-high results.
Yeah, I think that's always a tough balance to figure out. I know I'm not an agent, but when I got into real estate, just on the investing side, it was always like, okay, how do you find and buy? And it's just like, okay, you have to have so many conversations to get to that one yes. And learning that sometimes adding volume, unless you increase your ratios, close ratios or appointment setting ratios, can sometimes get you more than just working harder, right? So I don't know if you could speak on that a little bit. I'm sure you've had experience on that as far as how do you make that determination when it's, I don't need to work harder. Let me just tweak a few things.
For sure. And look, there's some people, especially here locally, that seem to be able to accomplish an unrealistic amount of things in a day's time. So, I mean, there's always the unicorns out there that are just crushing the productivity skills. But the reality, what you just said is right. At some point, you've got to transition from number of opportunities to quality of opportunities. And, even shifting your closing ratio 5% from a 20% close to a 25 and able to, because it's daunting, especially when we're these agents that are getting started in the game. When they're they're talking to their bigs or their team leaders and they're like, all right, today you only have to call 100 people. That's daunting, man. It really is. And not that you ever need to let off the gas pedal on that, but if I can, let's say we have an unreal closing ratio, right? As for a new agent, let's say I get 10%. Okay. So out of 100 people, I get 10 people on the phone. And we're talking on the phone. We haven't even done a deal yet. And then of that, we get usually about 10% of that number that actually becomes a client. So of those 100 new leads, you got one. So smart money would say, let's figure out how to turn that into two. Right? So it's maybe I don't necessarily know that I want to call 200 people, but do I really think that there was 99 people that did not have a need? No. Yeah. No, that's not the case. There's some skill set. There's some conversational piece that I should be able to evolve that might help me be a little bit more pointed, a little bit more direct, a little bit more whatever that client needs. So that's I think it's huge. I think there's only so many hours in a day, and if you can fill it with a bunch of dead calls, or you can invest a little bit of time in honing your craft and increase your closing ratio. And some of the best that do it here in town, I talk to them specifically on their closing ratios, and maybe it's because of their name, maybe it's because of how long they're in the business, but I mean, they're working like 50%. Like every other one they talk to, they're like, yep, you're the one.
Yeah.
You're the one.
Yeah, it's I've always been very intrigued by that, just the tweaking of the numbers, how big of a ripple effect it can have. It's like, well, how can you do more without adding more work? And it's always a fascinating conversation in looking at that.
Many times it just comes down to tactics. I mean, of those 100, if I call 99 of them and they all say no, there's a lot of people that are getting started in the game. They're like, all right, well, those 99 are off the list. Yeah. But maybe we circle back around. Yeah. Maybe we work on maybe I hit them with the all-time best tool ever, the handwritten note. I'm going to tell you what, it sounds elementary, but that is the go-to move. There is something special about getting something in the mail these days that does not have a printed name on it. Yeah. That has an actual signature. I took time out of my day to say I was thinking about you. it works.
That is a major part of our process, depending on where somebody may fall in our funnel. So yeah, it's important, and it does. It's always annoying in a sense, because it's one of those things you're like, I could just do an email or text message and be so quick. Oh no, just pause, take a breath, and remember why you're doing it, and then set the right intention.
Exactly. It sounds like, oh, I got to do this, until you realize, is this the thing that ups my ratios?
Yeah. And I mean, again, right, relationship, like how's somebody going to feel when they get this?
Right.
And so take the time to do it well. Curious, as don't want to take up all day just talking about random tactics, but had a couple, like 2 more questions, pretty much to unpack this, right? Of these 300 people, do you have any feel for how their business is? Like, how many of them are solo agents? How many of them have teams? Do they work in like big brokerages, boutique brokerages? I don't know if you can comment on that at all. So
interestingly enough, this is a very dynamic market here, different than any other market that I've ever been in. I've been fortunate enough to see markets all across the country. The answers here wouldn't be the same answers in other areas.
Right.
Here, there are certainly some single agents that are crushing it. But what we see is, once you cross that 15, get knee deep into that 20 million range, it is hard to do that on your own. So the idea, it depends on what your definition of team is. There's some mega teams here and that are doing crazy numbers. But there's also some listing specialists that have a buyer's agent, maybe an assistant. So it seems like a lot of people, once they cross really probably that 10 million mark, and when I think about it, they have some sort of help. They may not be running a mega team, but there's usually a listing specialist, a buyer specialist, maybe a transaction coordinator. It's hard to pull that together. Now, with that said, I know a couple guys right now that are 15 mil deep as we sit in the middle of the year that are doing it all on their own. And every conversation we talk, I really got to hire somebody. And I'm like, well, man, you need to do it. So it can be done, most of which will have some type of help. And they may not necessarily – what I do see very little of here locally, maybe it's just because I haven't had the right conversations, is partnerships, right? It's usually a team with a group of people under them. I don't see very many true 50-50 partners, which is different than a lot. Like, I see most of them, there's some sort of hierarchy.
Yeah. What do you mean by I guess I'm confused. So
I've
only been in Asheville. So
let's say you and I decide we were going to go sell some real estate together.
Yeah.
And it was going to be the Rodrigo and Charles team.
Okay.
You're 50%, I'm 50%. We are equal. Right. That's a different dynamic than, say, the Rodrigo team, where everything funnels through you and everything is you're the top, right? So the partnership relationships are hard. There's some people that are doing it the right way, but they're hard because animosity starts to pick in. If one person starts to feel somebody's doing more or less than the other person, unless you truly know this person and have a great relationship outside of real estate, a true partnership tends to breed unrest, if you will. But I know there's a couple people here in town that are doing it right, but it seems the vast majority are some type of team. Once you cross that 10 mil mark, and it's literally just because of the workload. There's so much that goes into a transaction.
There's a lot of paperwork from what I've heard. I'm always happy on the investment side. It's a little bit cleaner as far as the moving pieces. Right. It's like, you agree? I agree? Okay, good. Let's do this thing.
Exactly.
Well, what about choosing a brokerage, right? So maybe the right question is, instead of what's the makeup of like boutique versus not boutique, what do you think are say you just come out of real estate school, what questions should a new agent be asking themselves on where they should hang their license?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question for my position, because I love all my brokers out there. But coming out when somebody's first getting started, there's a lot of options, and there are some great companies here in town. There's the big brands, there's the boutiques, as you mentioned, and I think what it really comes down to, no matter what, is culture. Right? Not everybody fits in every culture.
100%,
there is some brands here that are nationally known for training modules and how they get people up and running, and that may be great for a lot of people, but there's going to be be somebody that comes in that really needs to sit down with their BIC and get their hand held for them and really show them the way. And after some really intense one-on-one, they could fly.
Yeah.
Right? So it all really depends on the individual. So there's a lot of different models in town. There's traditional models. There's some boutique models. There's some 100% models here in town. So it really, my advice to everybody coming out of school would be to truly don't just pick somebody because your buddy said go this place. Talk with the BIC, talk with the leader, see what their plan for growth is. Do they have educational opportunities? Because that's a big thing in this industry. There's not a ton of educational opportunities that don't cost a lot of money. YouTube is probably most agents' best friends. I mean, there's between some of my favorites, obviously Ferry and Brian Buffini, and I mean, I love these guys. Their stuff's readily available, but it really comes down to culture. Find a place that you can thrive, find a place that you feel comfortable, and that has the basic tools that you think you need.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part, is what you think you need may not necessarily be what it is. So having an open dialogue with whoever the leader is imperative.
Yeah. So we're in the middle of 2020 right now.
Still.
Right? It was funny when you mentioned like 1st April got released April. I was like, man, it was only April. It feels like so much time has passed since April. How do you, you get to see so many people in this industry, not just agents, right? Because you've got your vendors and things like, what's the sentiment or energy level, best as you can tell, about where things are at and where things are going?
So I think most real estate professionals right now, while we're all trying to navigate these uncertain waters, I think most people are pretty optimistic about what's going on. I mean, when the pandemic first hit, the sky's falling, everybody's freaking out. Are we essential? Are we not essential? Is the real estate market shutting down? What's happening? But pretty quick, that evolved. Now, once again, this market is different than so many others. We are going to catch the benefit of so many other metros looking to get out of big cities.
Yeah.
Right? So we have a lot of action coming our way.
You've mentioned a couple of times saying that Asheville is so different.
What's so unique? Man.
Why? Why do you think that's the case? Because I'll say one thing on that just before you answer is, from the investing side, it's also the case. Like, I've gone to like seminars or coaching programs or whatever, and they're like, do 1, 2, 3, and like, you're always going to get these results. I'm like, 1, 2, 3, and 0. What's going on here? I'm sure there's things I can do better, but it's pretty consistent, and especially talking to other people I know who invest. It's like there is that, like, things just don't work the same here. It's not that they don't work, but it is, as you said, different.
One of the biggest things here, and again, I'm still new to the area, so this is not fact, but my perception. It appears this is one of the few markets that I've been in that's not directly tied to the job market. It's interesting.
Yeah.
We got a lot of money coming in from other states. You got a lot of retirement, second home, investing, and it's not. It seems that a lot of these transactions I see these agents are putting together isn't because somebody got a new job here in Asheville and they're moving to Asheville for. It seems so that is one of the factors that has kept things moving so fast, because people aren't coming here necessarily, from what I've seen, anyways. Getting their job at whatever company and then going and looking for a house. They're buying their house with whatever resources they have, and they're figuring out what they're going to do when they get here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people I know, they're like call them the spreadsheet people, right? They make a spreadsheet on like, where do I want to live? And then Asheville ends up near the top of the list, and they're like, okay, well, I'll move there and I'll make it happen. And it seems like that's pretty common.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, right?
From what it seems. So this is probably, now I've never worked a New York City. I've never worked L.A. But this market, even before this craziness has happened, is a fast-moving market. It blew me away, actually, how fast it was. Everybody's, I think I saw a stat the other day, 56% of all new listings are sold in the first 30 days. That's cranking. That's cranking. Now, the downside of that is outside of that, the 44% usually sits around for a little while. So I guess that comes to pricing and positioning. But that's to have, one of the things I always looked at was the absorption rate. I always wanted to know how many houses is it going to can we sell in a month before we're out of this inventory. And I look at some of the areas around here, you got like 1 month which means if I sell this one house, you're out of gas. Like that's it. It moves very fast. So a very speedy market, a market that's not tied to the job market. That makes for two really interesting components. Then you have the agents out here that are running wide open. I mean, sometimes, I'm talking to them and they're like, I got appointments at 8. I'm like, all right, we'll catch up later in the afternoon. 6 o'clock at night, they're like, I'm still out. So I think in this market, while we're excited and we're riding the highs right now, you got to be ready to hustle to be out here. Yeah. I mean, you really do. And so that work ethic, that determination, that drive seems to separate the pack at a certain point.
Yeah. Well, I know you've got a lot of cool things going on, so I wanted to just make sure that let you talk about whatever you're excited about with Real Producers. What's next? Is there anything we should know about?
So, yeah, I mean, look, we are just getting warmed up here in town. So, obviously, we're not as far along as we wanted to be, just simply because we're having to deal with the things that everybody are dealing with right now. But two initiatives that I'm working on right now that I couldn't be more excited about is the first one is we're running a 40 under 40. So our October issue is dedicated strictly to the young professional, and it's secretly a nod to the fact that I no longer qualify in the age category. But it's something special. It's not a ranking of number, but it's more of a people's choice. Mm-hmm. It is 100% peer nominated. So I sent out requests to everybody in the entire real estate market, and we got a really, really good group of people that were nominated. And so that's really exciting because the whole October issue is going to be dedicated to these guys, giving them shedding some light on their young careers. Some may be young, some may be like me and been doing it a million years. We're planning a big photo shoot down in the art district. Mask will be optional if they want. And then also we just partnered up with Bottle Riot down in the arts district, and they're opening up for us. We're shutting the place down and doing a nice little mixer and all that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Finding ways to put gatherings together and still adhering to the guidelines. That's important to us. And then September 3rd is our first big event, which was supposed to be a 300-person event, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately. So looking at how we can navigate the rules and all that stuff, based on the type of facility we're doing it at and the size of the facility, we're able to put about 150-person party together.
Oh, wow.
And so it all comes down to the amount of people per square feet. It's a retail space. It's open for public. So I'm really excited about that. This party was supposed to happen in June. And we've just pushed back. And so finally I was talking with some people that I really value their opinion. And I was like, what's worse, a small party or no party? I think no party.
Yeah.
Right? I think, there's a lot of people that are concerned about their safety, and we understand that. We want to make sure everything will be done so that people feel safe. There'll be hand sanitizing stations. People welcome to wear their mask if they want to. But there's also a group of people that want to be safe, but are ready to get the heck out of the house. Right, it's people want to be able to get out there, and I think there's enough people that are comfortable enough with operating in a safe way, but still getting out and mixing it up. So we're going to put together. It's at one of our sponsors' venue, Atelier Maison, which I'm really excited to work with. They've got a 20-something thousand square feet facility.
Seems like good for the ratios for people per square foot.
And they got a 5,000 square foot outdoor space we'll have set up for parties, and
that's great.
It's awesome. So right now my big focus, the things I'm most excited about, is bringing the component that a lot of people were excited about. We do the magazine and we throw killer parties. And so being able to bring that element back online is super exciting to me. Of course, we got fun veterans issue planned for November. It's a lot of fun stuff, but I couldn't be more excited to be here in town and doing this. And it literally, it's one of those things where you genuinely enjoy getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
Because literally there's something exciting every day.
And I mean, that is the goal, right?
It is.
Yeah. So, what's the best way to get connected with you? If you're an agent and for some reason, somehow you haven't heard of Asheville Real Producers, where do they go?
So right now, the best place is our social platforms. Instagram's kind of my stomping ground.
Yeah.
That's where you can find all of us. We have a link in our bio that takes you to a landing page that has all sorts of information, whether it be for issues, whether it be for, downloading our app or just seeing some of the videos we've put together. We are a social platform, so there in our Facebook page, both are at Asheville Real Producers. We do not have a public-facing website by design. We're an exclusive club. So we want to keep the exclusivity, so that's why we don't put out to the public. So everything's social there. We highlight agents on our social channels, and then also a kind of secondary benefit is we also become a resource for the public to pop by and see, in fact, who the real producers are. So that's been kind of fun. We've actually gotten a lot of public traffic there.
That's awesome.
And I've heard people say that they connected with agents because they saw them featured.
It's always nice to have something that helps cut through the noise in the real estate industry world. There's a lot of people doing it, so it's nice to have a way to be like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, there is, and I got respect for everybody from the number 1 agent down to number 4,438, which is the last time I checked.
Wow, it's a lot.
There's a lot of them here in
town. It's like 5% of,
it's
wow.
a lot. I got respect and love for all of them because this year's 2,000 could easily be next year's 300. All right, so everybody's coming up and at different levels of their journey. But we focus on the top, and what you just said is very true. For a consumer, for a vendor that wants to work with a top agent, it's very easy to connect with an agent. Sometimes it's not so easy to connect with the one that might really work for you. And so while everybody we talk to, everybody we feature, we show love to, that is one of the indirect pieces, is that we kind of highlight agents on a personal level so that clients can determine whether or not this is the relationship they want to create. So it's really nice to be able to have focus on the industry and yet at the same time be able to bring business into the industry, which is nice.
Awesome. Well, Charles, any closing thoughts? Anything else that we need to touch on that we might not have?
I think we're good, man. I am so excited to be on here. When I will throw some love to the show here. One of the first bits of research I started doing when I got to town was looking for podcasts, and of course I stumbled upon you guys and have listened to most of your issues, most of your stories, and saw some people on here that I really trust and love, and so I was very excited when we connected the other day about this. So I love what you're doing, and I really just appreciate the opportunity to be on here today.
Awesome. Well, right back at you, and excited to see what 2020 has, and hopefully we'll get you back on here again in the future.
I'd love it.
Cool. Awesome, Charles. Thanks. Have a great one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.